Hello, and welcome to another episode of Talk InfoSec. My name is Clinton Walker, and today's episode will be covering the importance of supply chain security. And we've got an expert with us from Nexor, and it's my colleague, Sarah Knowles. Sarah, welcome to the program. Could you just briefly tell us a little bit about your background, and you're going to be sharing some insights into what it is to work in the supply chain and the security of that as well, right?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Clinton. So, hello, everyone. So my name's Sarah Knowles. I work at Nexor as a senior security consultant. I've worked at Nexor for just over a year now, but prior to that, worked across a lot of other different verticals and different industries. My background is IT, has been for, I'm going to date myself quite badly, but nearly sort of 30 odd years. And sort of started off on the support side, working my way up that way, and then sort of made the leap over to security probably about sort of 17, 18 years ago. My primary focus has been on information governance, risk and compliance. So what that means is that I look at the business aspects of security rather than sort of the technical controls, if you like.
Okay.
And supply chain falls quite nicely into pretty much a lot of the things that I cover. So it's
yeah, cool. So in terms of supply chain, people normally use the word or the phrase loosely. Could you just contextualize what supply chain is for our consumers so they understand that? Maybe give an example of something that can give them really a good picture of when you talk about supply chain. What does it mean for our listeners?
Yeah, sure. So like you say, it's a term that's bandied around quite a lot, and again, ask different people what it means to them, and you'll get different answers. But basically, I think most companies these days they rely on other businesses, other suppliers to deliver products, services, systems to their business. And this can be anything from the computers that we use, office furniture, tea and coffee. All of these people are suppliers, and basically, if they bring any of these goods to your business, they are part of your supply chain. Now, the information they have on your business is going to be different, and so we'll probably end up talking about that as we go along. But yeah, fundamentally, that's the supply chain. So it's quite a sort of a simple concept.
Sure.
And pretty much most businesses will have a supply chain of one size or another.
Exactly. And when I think of supply chain and talking to different audience, I normally use something that people would probably connect with, such as buying something online or using Amazon to buy something. Each of those links in the chain is somebody along the line to kind of produce the actual product. They ship it to Amazon, whether it be their fulfillment center. From Amazon, they got the Amazon delivery guy that brings it out to you until it gets to your end. So that's kind of one way of explaining it to some people.
Yeah, absolutely. And it forms part of even our life outside of work. If you go and buy a car, all of the components aren't from the manufacturer that you buy your car from, so they're all from Ford or Volkswagen. Insert appropriate car supplier there. They get all the little computer aspect, the nuts, the bolts. They all come from different people, and that is the supply chain. So it affects, I think, pretty much every single industry.
Yeah. So given that there are so many elements and touch points during that whole journey, how important do you see it for cybersecurity and privacy controls to be embedded in third-party contracts and engagement then?
So as a general sweeping statement as a security consultant, yes, it's very important. However, I will sort of caveat that.
Sure.
So, we said before about you might have somebody supplying your tea and coffee. So they're not having any input into your security infrastructure. So, do you need to include cybersecurity conditions in their contract? Probably not. The guy who comes and cleans your office windows, assuming we still have offices at the moment. But do you have a contract with him? Probably not. the people who maybe provide your IT support and basically, you know, connect into your server room to provide, you know, support on all of your kit and all of your infrastructure. Yeah, you definitely want to have sort of you know, some sort of cyber security sort of you know, options built into that contract. So yeah, as I say, we can't say it covers every single contract because it doesn't, but certainly anybody who's going to have access to your business data or data of your customers, then yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
you've got to have some form of agreement in that contract.
Yeah, definitely. And it nicely leads into the other point of passing off risks. So in the world of insurance, for example, that's one of the aspect of risk management, right? You pass it on or you mitigate the risk. So in this context, the passing off of risk to a third party tends to really looking at, some people see it as shirking their responsibility, or just like, oh, I don't want to do that, pass it on to that guy over there, the subcontract or outsource it over there. What's your views on that? Because it links in nicely with the previous question around embedding security in third-party contracts.
Yeah, it does. I'd actually sort of take a completely opposite view to what you've just said, in that by making sure that you've got cybersecurity in your contracts, you're actually ensuring that your company's information assets are being protected.
Yes.
So let's sort of think of an example here. So if you didn't have cybersecurity built into your contracts, so let's say you've outsourced your air conditioning to a maintenance supplier. You've got a top of the range aircon unit, so it's all remote access. So the supplier doesn't actually need to come to your site to service it and do whatever it is that aircon people do. But basically, you know, they've got a VPN into your site to monitor the system.
Sure.
But let's also go down the route that they're not because they're an aircon company. You know, they don't really sort of spend a lot of money on their IT support, and therefore they don't actually do their security patching.
Sure.
And let's say they've not done any for the last 12 months or so. You know, a hacker happens to fall upon this supplier, breaks into their systems, has a mooch around like hackers do. You know, they gain access, they move around the network, you know, they do all the lateral movement. And then they find, oh, there's a VPN connection here. I wonder where this leads to. And all of a sudden, it leads to your company.
Yeah.
And because you've maybe not set your network up properly and segregated things, your aircon's on the same network segment as your server room.
Yes.
All of a sudden, hacker who was just mooching around an aircon supplier has now got into your business and is now accessing all your crown jewels.
True.
So all your client information's now been stolen. All that's now out on the dark web. The Information Commissioner's Office is now carrying out a full investigation onto your company, and you're looking at a very large fine because basically you haven't protected your customers' data.
True.
There's a real risk you're not going to continue trading, and basically you're receiving publicity for all the wrong reasons, and all because you didn't have cybersecurity in that contract. If you had, and you'd stipulated that they needed cyber essentials, you know, quite an entry-level certification, but one that's very effective.
True.
You know, so you'd have carried out due diligence on your aircon supplier. You'd have insisted they had cyber essentials in place. They would have patched all their servers, patched all their systems. Hacker wouldn't have been able to get access, and the ICO has never even heard of you, and you just carry on your business. So, very long-winded story, but it's basically, you're not shirking responsibility at all. You're actually making sure that you are protecting your business information assets and that of your customers. Making sure everything stays where it should do.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't overemphasize security in all touch points for your business, right? So it makes sense to kind of cover all aspects as much as you can. And you make a point around the Information Commissioner as well. I mean, if you got the right or appropriate controls as you think you need in place, whether it be the baseline of the cyber essentials, they may be a bit lenient with you because you can demonstrate that you've put certain controls in place. And if
Yeah,
you were to
yeah.
bypass that, and it's not as a result of your controls, then they may be lenient and have some leverage there to kind of like, actually, we're not going to be as harsh on you as we would because
Yeah,
we
you know,
see
yeah,
you made a
you've
mistake.
done
Yeah,
you've done everything that was reasonable for your business to do
exactly.
to protect your data. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
you may still receive a fine, but it may not be in the millions of.
Again, I'm seeing based on my experience and working with other clients whereby they, again, in the clause, they've got these right to audit during the whole procurement process. Do you think that it is going too far in terms of verging on trust issues working with third parties with by implementing the right to audit? Because you'd have hoped that those companies are trustworthy and they're taking security serious. Do you think that the right to audit is going too far?
It's a tough one, that, and you've got to get the balance right, and you know what is actually reasonable to do, and again, that's going to be different for every single business, because it basically comes down to what your business's risk appetite is, and also the risk of that supplier being breached, and making sure that again that due diligence has been carried out, and yeah, it is a trust issue, and you'd like to say you can trust people that you're in business with, and of course you do, otherwise you wouldn't do business with them.
Exactly.
But yeah, as I say, it is a tough one. And as I say, we spoke about sort of cyber essentials and the obtaining of that, and you can sort of put the trust aspect into something like that as well.
Yeah.
If you're applying for the sort of the basic cyber essentials, it's a self-assessment questionnaire, and basically one of the directors of your company has to make a sort of a statement saying that all of this information is true. That questionnaire is submitted, it's marked, and you either pass the assessment or you don't. But my point is, that statement is made on trust. So
yes.
we see these sort of trust issues throughout the industry, but then there are other certifications, again ISO 27001 for example. You are even small businesses who go for that, they're subject to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days worth of audit.
What would you say are the 3 top threats that you see affecting the end-to-end aspect of the supply chain ecosystem? So it's a vast piece of, or it's a long chain. What would you say are 3 top threats?
Top tips. Okay, so
any threats that are affecting the supply chain ecosystem?
So I would say the number 1 is companies not being aware of who is in their supply chain. And I've seen it in a number of different companies. They think they've got a good idea of who they're dealing with, and then all of a sudden, there's some little firm who supplies some little widget. I forgot about them. They're connecting into our customer relationship management system. You probably want to carry out some sort of check on them. So not being aware of who is in your supply chain is probably the biggest issue. But then probably closely linked to that is the fact that whoever is in your supply chain is a target. And I think we've kind of moved away from the days when it was just big companies who were targets of threat actors. Nowadays, hackers they'll take anybody. They don't care the size of the business. And some people are just doing it for fun. The good old script kiddies. They probably don't even know who they're actually attacking. They're just sort of, hang on, I found a firewall here that I can get into. They don't do any research onto the company, and they're just trying their luck. It's it's like the old burglars going around a neighbourhood trying the door handles, seeing where they can get in. So that's probably the second one, is the fact that everybody's a target now. So therefore that's increasing the risk. And then I think sort of the third bit again kind of goes back to our due diligence point, and that a lot of businesses probably aren't carrying out a detailed enough risk assessment, but again caveat that with it has to be appropriate to the size of the business and the supplier and what they're supplying. But yeah, we're probably not doing enough of that risk assessment aspect.
So thank you for that. And in summary, what would you say are some of the top tips for our listeners to take away from this, given that supply chain is increasingly becoming more of a target for businesses and for the attackers themselves? What are some of the top tips that we can take away for our listeners here today?
It kind of goes back to relating to our 3 problems, and our 3 biggest issues. So absolutely, get visibility of every single supplier and understand what service it is that they deliver to your business. That absolutely do that. As I said, carry out that risk assessment. So obviously you need to know who you're going to risk assess. So it's find out who they are, carry out that risk assessment, and whether or not that's an assessment questionnaire or the audits. If you want to go down that route, without knowing what, I can't sort of say one is better than the other, because it all depends on your business. So say that's something you need to consider. But that whole process, like I say, doesn't need to be complicated, and you can make that as difficult or as easy as you want. There are plenty of businesses who just say, okay, if you're going to be a supplier of ours, you have got to have Cyber Essentials. You've got to have Cyber Essentials Plus. You've got to have ISO 27001. Whatever the standard is that you want to adhere to, have that rule and stick to it. And if you go down the Cyber Essentials route, you're actually going to fully mitigate 70% of all commodity level attacks that are out there in the wild, and that's just by doing the 5 basic controls that are in Cyber Essentials. And you protect yourselves against so much, and you partially mitigate about another 29%. So actually, in total, you nearly protect yourself against 99% of attacks out there.
True.
So Cyber Essentials, absolutely go that route. And then as I say, I think have some resilience in your supply chain. So especially if you've got a business who's supplying a critical service.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah. I really appreciate that, and I hope our listeners appreciate that. And thank you very much for your time. Some great top tips there to look out for. And thank you for our listeners as well. And you can see us on YouTube at talkinfosec.com or www.talkinfosec.com, or on Spotify, Overcast, and FM Assist in terms of our podcast hosting session. So thank you very much, and thanks for watching. See you again soon. Thank you.